Good day is February 5th, 2024. Responding to pressure from Americans to stop the violence against innocent Palestinians in Gaza and Israel, President Joe Biden has issued an executive order putting sanctions on specific Israeli citizens who had committed violence against Palestinians in Gaza. I'm Esmeralda Padilla-Gould and welcome to The Pulse. Uncle Sam and Joe Buban are on special assignment in Asia. Joining today as my co-host is Miss Film Nevada 2024, Sarah Obal. Sarah, thank you for joining us and welcome to our family of Film TV Network.
Thank you for taking me into the Film TV family.
According to a report from the online magazine Politico, the U.S. President has issued an executive order punishing Israeli settlers from violent crimes against Palestinians in Gaza. President Biden has issued an executive order aimed at punishing Israeli settlers who had been attacking Palestinians in the West Bank. That territory is legitimately controlled by the Palestinian Authority under the leadership of Mahmoud Abbas, agreed upon by Israel and the United States and the United Nations. That city includes the modern city of Bethlehem that is visited by hundreds of thousands of Christians year after year. 4 Israelites were sanctioned in this executive order, according to an announcement by the Biden administration. The named 4 Israelites were involved in violence, which has killed and displaced many Palestinians from their land, according to 2 Biden administration officials who talked to reporters. According to the same source, one of the sanctioned individuals was involved in initiating and leading a riot which involved setting vehicles and buildings on fire, assaulting civilians, damage to property which resulted in death of a Palestinian civilian. Other people assaulted farmers and Israeli activists with stones and clubs that lead to serious injuries. Sanctioned individuals will have their assets that are in the U.S. frozen and blocked, and foreign nationals will be prohibited from making payments and providing services to the designated individuals that are subject of the sanctions. The order from Joe Biden comes as pressure from Americans, including Democrats, to be tougher on Israel. As critics says, its military campaign in Gaza Strip is disproportionate to the October 7 attacks by Hamas. The pressure on the president to do something to curtail the violence against Palestinians in Gaza comes as he is due for a campaign visit in Michigan, home to many Arab Americans, fears of his approach on the Israeli-Hamas war. Far-right Israeli settlers in the West Bank have for years staged attack on many of the 3 million Palestinians in the territory. According to Palestinian-controlled agencies, they say more than 25,000 Palestinians had been killed in the Hamas-Israeli war, most civilians, and big part of it are children. That even United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has described Gaza as a graveyard for children. Here at The Pulse, we had shared independent reporting from various media outlets, including Democracy Now! Even foreign journalists from the Arab world had been killed by Israeli forces. More than 60 journalists from local and international newspapers and televisions had died in Israel. The most number of deaths among journalists in one country in a short period of time in 100 years history.
Republican majority in the House of Representatives continue to shrink. Last week, we ran an explainer segment why the Republican majority in the lower chamber of Congress has been the slimmest in history. Well, it shrunk even further. One more Republican congressman announced resignation from Congress shortly after our last week report. Republican Congressman Bill Johnson tendered his surprise resignation of last week to become the president of Youngstown State University, located in Youngstown, Ohio. That brings the number of Republican Congress members to 219, and Democrats with 213 members, with 3 vacancies. That would mean if a legislation had to be passed, and assuming all will be present for the vote, the Democrats will only need 3 defectors from the Republican side to vote with them to pass a legislation. And the prospect of Republicans to remain in control of the next Congress, the 119th Congress, grows even more bleak, as incumbents are facing formidable challengers, as more and more women voters perceive male Republican lawmakers as having declared war with them when it comes to their rights and freedom.
The former CIA officers who are violating the national security law was sentenced to 40 years in prison for data breaches at the Central Intelligence Agency. He was described as a CIA hacker and leaker to WikiLeaks. In a report from NBC News, the 35-year-old former CIA officer Joshua Schulte was convicted of the so-called Vault 7 leaks in 2 trials in 2022 and 2023. Damian Williams, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York in Manhattan, said Thursday last week that Schulte betrayed his country and that he caused untold damage to our national security in his quest for revenge against the CIA for its response to Schulte's security breaches when he was still employed at the agency. The prosecution had asked for a life sentence. We are going to take a commercial break. Please stay with us.
Pure Medical Equipment provides top-notch quality medical supply equipment. Whether to rent or buy, Pure Medical Equipment and Supplies has it all.
Pure Medical Equipment is committed to serve and give back to Southern Nevada.
We deliver medical supplies and rentals to your door.
Welcome back to The Pulse. Following Israeli strikes in Syria, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards removed officers from Syria, according to a Reuters report. On January 1st, due to a string of lethal Israeli strikes, Iran's Revolutionary Guards have reduced the number of their top officers stationed in Syria and are increasing their reliance on allied Shiite militia to maintain influence there, according to 5 people with direct knowledge of the situation. Since coming to support President Bashar al-Assad in the Syrian war 10 years ago, the Guards have experienced one of their most brutal periods in the country. More than 6 of their colleagues have been killed by Israeli strikes since December, including one of the senior intelligence generals in the Guards. The Iranian government's decision to remove senior commanders is partially motivated by its opposition to reprisal, as hardliners in Tehran want. 3 individuals told Reuters that the crisis was spreading rapidly throughout the Middle East. Although the sources claim that Iran has no intention of leaving Syria, a crucial area under Tehran's sphere of influence, the reconsideration highlights how the region is experiencing the fallout from the war that was started by the Palestinian militant organization Hamas on October 7th's attack on Israel. Hamas hacker Inan has made an effort to remain outside the conflict, even though he supports organizations who have entered it from Lebanon, Women, Hay, and by the so-called Axis of Resistance, which is hostile to U.S. and Israeli interests. Following his briefing by Ras al-Samanian commanders, one of the senior security officials had departed Syria, accompanied by numerous mid-level personnel.
In the Russia-Ukraine war, Al Jazeera in Russia reports that some Russians are defecting Russia to defend Ukraine. "We must put an end to the war," said a Russian recruit, as fresh Russian unit defends Ukraine. There are a wide range of combatants in the Siberian battalion who take a chance on Russia's wrath by enlisting with the enemy. Ukrainians Kyiv. One who goes by the name Johnny, 32, of St. Petersburg, established a goal for himself after Russia invaded Ukraine in February 2022. His goal was to topple Vladimir Putin's government. In reality, he told Al Jazeera in a cafe at a rural gas station outside the capital of Ukraine, he would have loved to kill the Russian president with his own hands. Johnny joins other Russians fighting for Ukraine and against his own country in October as a member of the Siberian Battalion, which was established by the Russian Civic Council last summer. We aim to bring democracy to Russia. Furthermore, things won't be possible as they are. Russia needs to break apart into smaller parts. It doesn't matter whether it's tiny like Belgium. Regions like Chechnya, Yakutia, and others need to have the freedom to break away if they so desire, according to Johnny. The coordinator of the group, Denis Sokolov, 54, claims that 50 fighters from the outfit are presently in Ukraine for training or combat, as they wait to cross the border. Another 40 are being background investigated by the security services of Ukraine, claiming that the Civic Council gets as many as 10 applications a day. He stated thousands more Russians are eager to fight Moscow. People who wish to enlist must first leave Russia first.
The Brexit moment in West Africa portends catastrophe for the area. In a report from Reuters last week, millions of people are left in uncertainty as a result of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger's decision to leave the West African economic and political bloc. Additionally, the three junta-led nations' connections to Russia are likely to strengthen. Negotiations may be possible if the decision to leave the 15-member Economic Community of West African States is not implemented right away. However, if implemented, it is expected to upset the region's $150 billion annual trade and services flows. It also calls into doubt the millions of citizens from the three impoverished, landlocked countries who relocated in neighboring states after the Union granted them the freedom to work and travel without a visa. More than 5 million individuals from Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger live in Ivory Coast alone. Niger and Nigeria have a 1,500-kilometer border, and 80% of Niger's trade is with its wealthier neighbor, according to Sedak Obal, president of the CIRES research group in Paris. A sizable Niger diaspora also exists in Ghana, Togo, and Benin. The stakes are the highest for the citizens of these three nations if they opt to leave, he said. It will become a very big problem, economically and politically, he said. Over a dozen analysts and Africa diplomats contacted by Reuters concurred that the trio's position on ECOWAS has highlighted unrest throughout the region. Since Islamist extremists took control of numerous nations, forces have battled to keep them at bay. In the meantime, Nigeria, the United States, and France, former colonial power, have all suffered as Russia has increased its influence on the region. Russia and Niger, which has been under junta rule since a coup last year, decided to strengthen their military ties earlier this month. Last week, Russian military forces took off for Ouagadougou, the capital of Burkina Faso, to guarantee the security of the nation's military chief. There are also 1,000 fighters from Russia's Wagner mercenary squad in Mali. We will take a commercial break. Please stick around.
Pure Medical Equipment provides top-notch quality medical supply equipment. Whether to rent or buy, Pure Medical Equipment and Supplies has it all.
Pure Medical Equipment is committed to serve and give back to Southern Nevada.
We deliver medical supplies and rentals to your door.
Back to our U.S. news, we went looking for a good legal analysis about the biggest loss yet by Donald Trump in court. This one could hurt him financially with a huge amount. Last week, we reported that Trump was told by a New York jury to pay $83.3 million to E. Jean Carroll for the civil rape case. Many legal analysts have been critical of the conduct in court by Trump and his lawyer, Alina Habba, for bad lawyering and sounding more like a TV show lawyer. Here's one from the Midas Touch Network. Please watch this.
No, I'm not having any second thoughts about representing President Trump. It is the proudest thing I could ever do. What I am having second thoughts about is the license that I stand here with that the people in there are supposed to have. I have not spoken because I respect my ethics while I'm on trial. But let me now speak about what has happened. I have sat on trial after trial for months in this state, the state of New York. Attorney General Letitia James, and now this. Weeks.
You were watching Donald Trump's lawyer there, Alina Habba, who's quite possibly the worst lawyer in American history, whined to the press, complained to the press, almost looked like at points that she was nearly in tears after a federal jury in Manhattan awarded E. Jean Carroll $83.3 million in her defamation lawsuit against Donald Trump. You heard that right. Donald Trump hit with an $83.3 million verdict. If he's going to appeal that, he's going to have to post a bond at least equal to $83.3 million. The way the jury verdict broke down was $7.3 million in compensatory or emotional distress damages, $11 million in reputational repair damages, $65 million in punitive damages, for a total of $83.3 million in the final verdict. This is the second jury in Manhattan to rule against Donald Trump. The first jury in May found in favor of E. Jean Carroll for $5 million. Add up the two verdicts. We're at $88.3 million in verdicts there alone. Let me show you this next clip from E. Jean Carroll after that first clip I showed you where she was whining and bringing up New York Attorney General Letitia James. She must be realizing that next week, Justice Arthur Engoron in the New York Attorney General civil fraud case will probably issue a judgment against Donald Trump in the range of $250 to $500 million. So more than $500 million in judgments against Donald Trump are coming. The Alina Habba specialty, if you will. And Alina Habba doesn't understand basic aspects of law. As I told you, her corruption is exceeded by her incompetence, and she's probably the most incompetent lawyer I've ever seen, period. The worst of the worst of the worst. That's saying a lot in MAGA world. Here she is whining about not being allowed to bring in certain types of evidence and experts. Watch her whine and then watch me debunk her whining. But first, Alina Habba whining. Play the clip.
So don't get it twisted, whoever asked me that question. I am so proud to stand with President Trump. But I am not proud to stand with what I saw in that courtroom.
Ms. Hubbard, is the
I'm not finished. Let me just finish and I'll take questions, please. Before I walked into court, that judge decided that every single defense President Trump had, we were not allowed to raise in front of the jury. It is in writing, and I encourage the journalists, the real journalists, to take the minute to look at his orders. There was no proof. And I couldn't prove that she didn't bring in the dress. There was no DNA. There was no expert. My experts were denied. Two of them were denied to come.
Well, if you've been following the Midas Touch Network and you've been reading the court orders, Alina Habba missed very basic deadlines. So if you want to talk about Donald Trump submitting his DNA, Trump did not submit his DNA. Once the evidence closed, he said he wanted to make a deal to turn over the DNA, but that's not the way courts work. If Trump wanted to test his DNA against the dress, he could have done that for years. And Trump decided not to do that. So when she talks about the dress, that was her own doing. That was Donald Trump not providing a DNA sample. Regarding Alina Habba not being able to put on experts, she disclosed the experts late. She missed the deadlines, and the court explained there are deadlines in federal trials, and if you want to submit experts, you have to do so properly. You have to make appropriate expert disclosures on time, the same way E. Jean Carroll's lawyers did, and you did not do that, so you waived the right to bring that. And then in terms of trying to show other evidence, there was another jury that ruled against Donald Trump back in May. There's a doctrine called collateral estoppel, which holds that if there is a jury and a finding that is made of liability, you don't have conflicting verdicts. So liability was established. This case was about damages. Donald Trump had the opportunity to testify at the other trial, and he chose not to. He fled to Scotland, held the shovel, and claimed that he was building things. So this was all your doing, Alina Habba. In this next clip right here, more whining from Alina Habba about Reid Hoffman providing some funding for the costs in the litigation, which have nothing to do with the case. Reid Hoffman funding the litigation has nothing to do with the fact that Donald Trump was found liable for sexual abuse and that he continues to defame E. Jean Carroll. Here, play this clip of Habba whining more. Play it.
They didn't let me bring up that Reid Hoffman funded Miss Kaplan. And you know what we got in there? That my witness, who was her friend, who said that she is a drug addict and the drug addict is herself. That friend, I found out in there, was paid for by Miss Kaplan's firm, and that is disgusting. That is a violation of everything I stand for, and that is why I stand with Trump.
It's just MAGA whininess. Whiny, 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 whiny. Here she is saying that she thinks she has a great record on appeal, and she talks about that Donald Trump stood up and he showed up. Actually, showed up and walked out during the closing arguments. He was too scared to be there when the verdict issued. And so he was there for a very short period of time, whining like a petulant child, but would not actually be there when the verdict dropped because he's a coward. Play this clip of Alina Habba.
That was made in there, and the behavior I saw in there, some of which was reported widely today, gave us the most perfect record on appeal, and even if I needed it, which I don't, we were stripped of every defense, every single defense before we walked in there. And I am proud to stand with President Trump because he showed up, he stood up, he took the stand, and he faced this judge. And you know what? I'll continue to do so with him. Yes.
And again, Alina Habba showing she doesn't understand any basics of federal trial practice or trial practice in general. Here she's whining about not being allowed to do things when you have to follow the rules of the court. You know, this isn't the MAGAverse in federal courthouses, okay? Federal courthouses, it is the rule of law. But let's just watch Alina Habba whine one more time. Play this clip.
Twisted. We are seeing a violation of our justice system. Ladies and gentlemen, you are not allowed to be stripped of every defense that you have. You are not allowed to be told that you can't bring it up. And imagine a point where a judge tells the lawyer, before your client, the former president of the United States, the leading candidate and obvious nominee for the Republican Party, before he takes the stand to defend himself, Ms. Habba, tell me the questions you're going to ask in open court and tell me exactly what he's going to respond. And then edited my questions, edited the response he was allowed to give. And guess what my client did? He took the stand. He abided by the rules of this corrupt system that I have seen. We will immediately appeal. We will set aside that ridiculous jury. And I just want to remind you all of one thing. I will continue with President Trump to fight for everybody's First Amendment right to speak. Everybody's a right to defend themselves when they are wrongfully accused and to be able to say, I didn't do it. And to double and triple and quadruple down and say, this is wrong. This is wrong. But we are in the state of New York. We are in a New York jury, and that is why we are seeing these witch hunts, these hoaxes, as he calls them, and this is another one of them, be brought in New York, in states where they know they will get juries like this.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump posted, "Absolutely ridiculous. I fully disagree with both verdicts and will be appealing this whole Biden-directed witch hunt focused on me and the Republican Party. Our legal system is out of control and being used as a political weapon. They have taken away all First Amendment rights. In all caps, this is not America." So blaming President Biden because he was found liable in May. Trump was found liable in May for raping E. Jean Carroll, and a jury found him liable. And then another jury just found him liable again. And he keeps on posting more defamatory statements against E. Jean Carroll. And that's Biden's fault. A bunch of whiny losers. Whiny losers.
We are out of time for today's show. Please join us again next week. I'm Esmeralda Padilla-Gould. Thank you for watching.
And I'm Sarah Obal. God bless your week.
Enjoy Film TV Network on KGNG 26.8 Las Vegas and www.filmtv.us. Search for and download Film TV Network in Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Facebook, and YouTube. Download the WCE TV app from smartphones and search for Film TV.